Black CEO denied first class 25 minutes later. He took down the airline's entire booking network. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Sir, step aside. First class is for premium passengers only. The voice cracked through the terminal like a whip. Loud, sharp, public. Heads turned instantly like a single organism reacting to the scent of blood. Phone cameras lifted in synchronized curiosity, lenses gleaming under the cold fluorescent lights of Gate A-17. Marcus Langford stood at the front of the first-class line, suitcase by his feet, boarding pass already extended. He hadn't said a word. He didn't need to. His calm presence alone contrasted so violently with the hostility aimed at him that the air between them felt electrified. But the gate agent, red lipstick, stiff bun, name tag glinting, Tammy didn't blink. She planted her palm on her hip with the authority of someone who had mistaken proximity for power. I said step aside, she repeated, louder this time, eyes narrowing. We've had issues with people trying to sneak into this line. Please move. You're holding up actual first-class guests. A murmur rippled through the travelers behind him. A couple exchanged amused glances. A teenage boy hit record on his phone. A man in a tailored navy suit smirked, whispering, "Here we go again." Marcus didn't move. He simply lifted his boarding pass a little higher, his voice quiet but steady. "This is my line." Tammy's laugh was quick, brittle, dismissive like glass cracking under stress. "Sir, we both know that's not possible. Not with that ticket." She jabbed a manicured finger toward his digital pass. "These are verified at purchase. It's first class, top tier, reserved, exclusive. You can't just stroll in." And her eyes swept over him. The pause wasn't long, barely half a second, but it was enough. Enough for the room to feel the judgment. Enough for the moment to sour around the edges. And just like that, the humiliation became a spectacle. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Marcus. At the far end of the terminal, a flight attendant glanced over, then quickly looked away. A security guard straightened up, sensing something brewing. Gate announcements faded into background static as more people turned to watch the unfolding scene like it was an unscripted airport drama. Tammy leaned forward, lowering her voice just enough to sound like she was doing him a favor, but not enough to hide the condescension. "Sir, I'm going to ask you one last time. Step aside." "You don't have clearance for this section." Marcus remained still, not tense, not defensive. Just still like a man learning the temperature of a storm before deciding whether to walk through it. Behind Tammy, her supervisor, a stocky man with a shiny badge and the tired confidence of someone who believed a clipboard made him king, approached. "What's the issue?" he asked. Tammy gestured broadly toward Marcus. "Hez trying to access first class with a basic fare." The supervisor didn't ask Marcus a question, didn't request his ticket, didn't even look at the pass in his hand. He simply gave him that look, the one Marcus had memorized years ago, the look that weighed skin before words. "Sir," the supervisor said, already summoning a nearby guard with 2 fingers, "I'm going to need you to step out of line. You're disrupting paying passengers." The phrase hit like an insult disguised as policy. Paying passengers, as if Marcus was something else, someone lesser. The guard began walking over, phones tilted higher. A young woman muttered, "This is embarrassing." Another chuckled, "Should have bought the right ticket." Marcus inhaled slowly, measured, controlled, a man deciding not whether to react, but when. Tammy shook her head, muttering just loud enough, "Some people always try to get what they didn't earn." Marcus' eyes lifted quiet, cold, assessing. Not anger, not outrage, just recognition, the kind that says, "Ah, so this is the battle you've chosen." The supervisor stepped closer. "Sir, if you don't move, I'll have to remove you from the boarding area." For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Marcus lowered his boarding pass. His phone buzzed in his pocket, one soft vibration, barely audible. But it changed the entire energy around him. The slightest shift in his expression, calm sharpening into purpose, was enough to make even the security guard slow his step. And then the narrator's voice returns, low and deliberate. They had no idea the man they were humiliating was the one person their airline could never afford to offend. The terminal lights flickered once, a coincidence, but the prelude to something far bigger. Marcus finally spoke. "Very well," he said softly, and the temperature of the entire gate dropped by a degree. Something had begun. The terminal didn't breathe after that. It just watched. Tammy straightened her blazer like she had just won a small battle. The supervisor crossed his arms, already convinced of his own authority. And Marcus, standing exactly where they wanted him gone, held that quiet stillness that made the air feel strange, like pressure dropping before a storm. "Let's try this again," Tammy said, the sweetness gone from her voice. "ID, ticket, verification, all of it." Marcus handed her both without a word. She snatched them as if she expected the documents to crumble into dust. Her eyes darted over the digital pass, then to Marcus, then back to the screen. Her confusion flickered for one brief, honest moment, but she buried it quickly beneath a familiar mask. "This can't be correct," she murmured, tapping the monitor harder than necessary. "System must be glitching." The supervisor leaned over her shoulder. "What's wrong?" Tammy lowered her voice, but not enough to avoid the crowd's hungry curiosity. "It says First Class Priority Elite. That tier doesn't just show up. Something's wrong." The supervisor frowned. "Check again." "I am checking," she snapped under her breath. "The system isn't matching his profile. Maybe it's a duplicate account. Or fraud." A woman behind Marcus scoffed loudly. "Obviously fraud. Look at him." But she cut herself off when Marcus turned his head slightly, just enough for her to see his eyes. She swallowed whatever word she was about to release. Tammy shoved the ID back at him. "I'm going to need a second form of identification. Passport, corporate credentials, something credible." He didn't reach for his wallet. "Why?" Marcus asked simply. Tammy blinked, caught off guard by the question. "Because," she gestured vaguely, "because this doesn't make sense. People don't get this tier unless they're long-term executive partners with the airline. It's reserved. For whom? For people with status," she said, lowering her voice as if that somehow made it better. "You must have booked something incorrectly." Or the system did. Marcus studied her for a long second, as if examining something fragile. "The system," he repeated. "Is that the explanation you're settling on?" She bristled. "Sir, you're being difficult. I'm just trying to help you understand the rules. If you don't belong in first class, you don't belong. It's that simple." The supervisor nodded, already impatient. "Either produce a secondary ID or step out of line." "We've been very clear." A security guard drifted closer, not aggressive, but eager enough to feel like a threat waiting for permission. Someone whispered, "This is getting good," as a phone camera zoomed in. Tammy tapped the monitor again, annoyed. "Why is our system lagging today?" She hit another key. "Great. Now it's frozen. Just perfect." These outdated interfaces always break when screening questionable tickets. Marcus' gaze sharpened, subtle but unmistakable. He knew that screen. He knew the software version. He knew the exact glitch pattern, because he built the system they were insulting. Tammy flicked her wrist toward him dismissively. "I can't validate this. Step aside. I'll rerun your data once the system resets." Marcus didn't move an inch. "You want me out of this line," he said quietly, "because the computer is slow?" Tammy inhaled sharply, mistaking composure for defiance. "Because we have protocol, sir, and you're not passing it." The supervisor's patience snapped. "Security, escort him to the general service desk. They can deal with him." A hush fell over the gate. The guard approached fully now, stopping just a foot from Marcus. His voice softened, not unkind, but certain. "Sir, let's not make this complicated." Marcus lifted his eyes not to the guard, not to Tammy, but to the flickering monitor behind them, the one freezing on a line of code he could read from across the counter. A hint of recognition glinted in his gaze. His phone buzzed again. A message preview slid across the screen. Rachel, ready on your mark. Marcus let out one quiet breath. Then he said, in a tone so calm it felt unnatural in the tension of the moment, "I'm not the one making this complicated." The lights above the counter flickered. The boarding pass printer behind Tammy sputtered once, then stopped mid-cycle. Her eyes widened. What now? But Marcus already knew. The first domino had fallen. For most travelers at Gate A17, Marcus Langford was just a tall, composed man in a charcoal coat, another face trying to make it through a crowded airport. But the stillness he carried wasn't the stillness of someone intimidated. It was the stillness of someone who had lived this moment 100 times and survived all of them. As the flickering monitor struggled to reboot and Tammy muttered curses under her breath about faulty systems, Marcus' mind wasn't on her or the guard hovering nearby. It drifted, for a brief second, to where all storms start. The past. Marcus Langford, 42, founder, architect, the quiet force behind Aerosys Global, the backbone technology that powered 19 major airlines, booking networks, check-in systems, and flight coordination grids. A system so deeply embedded in aviation infrastructure that shutting it off, even for seconds, sent airports into chaos. Most people never heard of Aerosys. They only heard announcements. We are experiencing a temporary delay due to technical issues. Those issues were usually lines of code, Marcus wrote before he turned 30. He never sought fame. He never gave interviews. And he certainly never put his face next to his accomplishments. Let others chase headlines, Marcus chased silence. Progress. Stability. What his grandmother once called power that doesn't need applause. He built Aerosys from a rented desk in a shared workspace, running on instant coffee and nights that bled into mornings. He coded through power outages, through dismissals, through meetings where executives called him the intern or assumed he was there to fix the projector. He remembered entering a venture capital office with a prototype that would one day control half the country's flight infrastructure. The receptionist looked him up and down and said, "Deliveries enter through the back." He delivered something, yes, but not what they expected. 1 year later, the same VC begged to buy 10% of Aerosys. He sold them 0%. His stillness now at Gate A17 was not weakness, it was memory. It was the strength of a man who built an empire behind curtains woven from doubt and prejudice. Tammy slammed a key on her keyboard. "Why won't this thing load?" The supervisor cursed under his breath. The system spun, lagged, froze. Marcus knew exactly what line of code was trying and failing to execute. He wrote it 12 years ago. He knew the glitch by heart. Because he was the system. But none of that mattered as much as the reason he was here today. He glanced at the departure screen. Flight 227 Chicago to Vancouver. A meeting waited on the other side of that sky. Not a negotiation, a rescue mission. For 3 months, the airline whose staff now treated him like an intruder had been bleeding money from an operational leak Marcus had quietly patched. Without him, their entire network would have collapsed during the holiday surge. Had agreed to meet their executives in Vancouver to finalize a stabilization plan that would save thousands of jobs and hundreds of routes. A lifeline. One he didn't have to offer, one he offered anyway. But the irony, sharp as a blade, was this. They were humiliating the man, flying out to save them, and they were doing it with a confidence only ignorance could justify. The supervisor tapped his radio. Security. Escalating. Code 7 at a 17. Passenger refusing compliance. Marcus didn't react. Had heard worse. Much worse. A memory flickered the day he received the funding that turned Aerosys from a dream into a force. The investor, an older black man, shook his hand and said, "Build something so essential they can't board a plane without depending on you. Then watch who questions your right to stand in line." Marcus had built exactly that. And now, as the guard stepped closer, as the monitor froze a second time, as the crowd waited for the difficult passenger to be dragged away, Marcus finally exhaled. Not in defeat, in decision. Because the moment Tammy dismissed him, the moment the supervisor summoned more security, the moment the system lagged on a line of code he recognized, Marcus knew. Aerosys was ready. Rachel was waiting. and the clock had started. The storm hadn't broken yet, but the sky was darkening, and Gate A-17 had no idea who they were about to provoke. The guard's shadow merged with Marcus, stretching long across the polished airport floor. The crowd quieted not out of respect, but anticipation. Everyone loves a spectacle, especially one where they believe the ending is predictable. Tammy folded her arms smugly. The supervisor straightened his badge. The guard took one more step, with cast. "Sir, last warning," the supervisor barked. "You either step out of this line, or we will remove you." Marcus finally lifted his gaze to meet his. There was no fear in it, no apology. Just an unsettling clarity, the calm of a man who understood exactly what he was capable of. The supervisor mistook the silence for surrender and motioned toward the guard. "Go ahead." The guard reached for Marcus' elbow, and that was the moment the air changed. Marcus didn't pull away. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even shift his stance. He simply slid his phone from his coat pocket with one smooth, practiced motion, like someone reaching for a truth they had put aside for later. A vibration pulsed in his palm. "Rachel. Standing by. Protocol, Sierra armed. Your call." Marcus tapped the screen once, then lifted the phone just enough for the light to hit his eyes. "Rachel," he said softly. "Initiate Protocol, Sierra." The line clicked open. Her voice came through calm, precise, surgical. "Confirm order?" Marcus watched the supervisor's confidence swell as he stepped closer, expecting capitulation. "Confirm," Marcus said. "A beat." Then Rachel spoke the words that would unravel the airport's day. "Copy." Pulling the network. Nothing dramatic happened at first. No alarms, no flashing lights, no sirens screaming into the rafters, just a flicker. A subtle, almost dismissible flicker across the check-in monitors behind the counter, like static chasing itself across the edges of the screen. Then, another flicker. Then, a freeze. Tammy frowned, tapping the keyboard again. "Why is this stuck?" It was just loading. The supervisor leaned over. "Restart it." "I did. It's not responding." "Try manual override." "I am trying." Her words cut off as the entire screen behind them went black. Not dim, not glitched. Dead. A soft electronic hum pulsed across the row of counters as every display followed one by one, collapsing into darkness like a row of candles snuffed out during a storm. The boarding pass printer clicked, squealed, and stopped mid-spool. The self-check kiosks nearby let out a synchronized error tone. Passengers gasped as the digital departure board across Gate A-17 blinked, stuttered, and then threw a cascade of system failure errors. "Is the airport losing power?" someone whispered. "No," another traveler murmured, eyes widening. "This is a system crash." The guard hesitated, sensing something far beyond a simple, difficult passenger. Sir?" he said, stepping back slightly. "Did you do something?" Marcus didn't answer him. His attention was fixed on Tammy, whose smirk had dissolved into panic as she hammered her keyboard like it might magically wake up. "What is going on?" she snapped. The supervisor tapped his radio. "This is A-17 requesting immediate IT support. Our whole counter is down. Repeat system failure at A-17. The radio crackled back with noise, then a frantic voice. "A-17, it's not just you. All terminals are reporting outages. Booking, check-in, gate control, everything is failing. We're trying to figure out what's happening." The supervisor's face drained of color. Passengers began to swarm with questions. A woman shouted, "My flight is boarding in 10 minutes. Another yelled, "Why are our passes invalid now?" A man cursed as his digital ticket disappeared from the app entirely. And in the center of the chaos, untouched by it, stood Marcus. Calm, measured, unmoved. Tammy stared at him, breath quickening. What did you do?" Marcus didn't raise his voice. "You said the system was malfunctioning," he replied gently. "I decided to let you see what a real malfunction looks like." Behind him, a wave of error notifications cascaded across every visible screen in the terminal, a digital collapse unfolding in slow, merciless symmetry. The supervisor took a shaky step back. "Who are you?" Marcus finally looked him in the eyes. The man your airline should have treated with basic respect. He slid his phone back into his coat, smooth, clean, final. and the one who controls the infrastructure you just lost. A silence followed, stunned, fragile, irreversible. Because in that moment, Gate A-17 understood something too late. They hadn't pushed the wrong passenger. They had pushed the power that kept them in the air. Chaos doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it begins with silence, a quiet that feels wrong. That was the silence spreading now. A single gate freezing was an inconvenience, but when every screen from a 1 to a 32 began blinking in the same frantic stuttering pattern, passengers felt the shift. The airport, a machine of schedules, codes, scans, and digital arteries, was losing its pulse. Then came the sound. A chorus of error tones, out of sync and rising like digital panic. Tammy flinched at each beep. Why aren't these systems rebooting? They always reboot. The supervisor hovered behind her, face chalk white. This can't all go down at once. It's impossible. But it wasn't. At least not for the man standing 5 feet away. The departure board above them flickered again, then collapsed fully into a wall of red. All flights delayed. A couple gasped. A businessman cursed loudly. A woman burst into tears. She had a connecting flight, a medical appointment, a child waiting somewhere far away. And still, the collapse spread. The airline's mobile app crashed on every phone. QR codes failed to render. Boarding groups vanished. Reservations disappeared like smoke in wind. A man yelled at a kiosk, slamming its frozen touchscreen. "My ticket's gone! It was right here!" The kiosk spat a final error code and shut itself off. Gate A-17 was no longer a line. It was a rupture, and the rupture was widening. Marcus watched it unfold without satisfaction, without malice. He didn't enjoy chaos. He didn't need an audience. But he understood cause and effect. And today, Gate A-17 was learning both the hard way. The guard lowered his hand from Marcus' arm as if touching him might trigger another collapse. "Sir, is this connected to what you just?" Marcus offered no answer. Silence was enough. From across the concourse, 2 IT staff sprinted toward the gate lanyards, flapping, panic in every step. One clutched a laptop, the other a diagnostic scanner used only for severe emergencies. They arrived breathless. "What's down?" one asked. "Everything," the supervisor said. "The whole booking system. It's like the network was pulled at the root. The IT tech froze exactly the way someone freezes when hearing the name of a ghost they hoped never to meet." "No," he whispered. No. That's not possible. The root server is Aerosys. They don't shut down without." His eyes landed on Marcus. They widened. And in that instant, recognition replaced disbelief. He swallowed. "You're him," Tammy blinked. Who is he?" The IT tech didn't answer, couldn't. Because how do you explain to a gate agent that the man she publicly humiliated was the architect of the system controlling the screens melting down behind her? Across the airport, announcements crackled through overhead speakers. "Attention passengers. We are experiencing a temporary outage across all check-in and boarding platforms. Please remain calm. Do not attempt to rescan your boarding passes. All flights are currently grounded until further notice. Grounded." The word dropped like a stone into the heart of the airport. A grounded airport is a wounded animal, restless, frightened, unpredictable. Passengers turned to staff, demanding answers. Staff turned to supervisors, who had none. Supervisors turned to it, whose faces said everything. This wasn't a glitch. This was a shutdown. A shutdown controlled by a single man still standing exactly where had been told he didn't belong. Tammy pointed a trembling finger at Marcus. You caused this. You shut down the whole airport." Marcus finally spoke quiet, steady, devastating in its restraint. "No," he said. "I shut down your access to the system. The airport is reacting to your airline's failures." But the network," she stammered. "Your airline," Marcus corrected, "relies entirely on Aerosys. And Aerosys relies on professionalism and respect from its partners." The supervisor stepped forward, voice cracking. You can't. We have thousands of passengers." Marcus looked at him with a level gaze. "For 20 minutes, you couldn't respect one. A beat of silence. A long one. Then the IT tech whispered the truth everyone else was too afraid to say. We need to call corporate. Now. They'll know what to do. Corporate? The supervisor barked. What can corporate do? The IT tech swallowed hard. Because corporate knows who he is. The murmurs spread like a brush fire. Who is he? What's happening? This is insane. He shut the whole thing down. But Marcus wasn't listening to any of it. His phone vibrated once more. Rachel. Network pull successful. Airline operations frozen. Awaiting next directive. He slid the device back into his coat pocket. And Gate A-17 watched, powerless, as the quiet man they had mocked became the still point around which the entire airport began to fall apart. The storm had broken. They were only beginning to feel the rain. The buzz of chaos churned through Terminal A like a rising tide, loud, frantic, but threaded with something deeper. Fear. The kind of fear that comes when people sense a collapse they can't explain. And in the center of it, Marcus stood still, not towering, not posturing, simply present, and somehow that presence alone made the space around him widen, as if the airport itself recognized a hierarchy no one else had seen until now. Tammy was the first to break. "This is insane!" she snapped, voice cracking as she jabbed a shaky finger at Marcus. He's doing something. He has to be." But the words withered as the IT technician, eyes still locked on Marcus, raised his hands in a gesture halfway between caution and respect. "Stop," he said softly. "Just stop." Tammy blinked, startled. "What? Why?" "Hess shutting us down!" The technician exhaled like someone bracing to deliver a truth that would reshape the room. "Do you know who he is?" he asked Tammy. She scoffed. "Some entitled passenger causing trouble." The technician shook his head. "No. Has the reason your airline runs." The supervisor frowned. "That doesn't even make sense." The technician swallowed hard, glancing once more at Marcus as if checking for permission. "He built Aerosys." Silence. Not confusion. Not disbelief. A hollow, stunned silence that spread outward in widening rings through Gate A-17. Tammy's lips parted, but no sound emerged. "Aerosys," the supervisor repeated, voice suddenly small. "As in, our Aerosys?" The technician nodded. "Yes. The system your airline uses for booking, check-in, fleet assignments, reroutes everything. He designed it. He owns it." He pointed at Marcus, almost reverently. "That's Marcus Langford." You could feel the shock hit the crowd like a dropped weight. Phones lowered, whispers sharpened. Someone gasped. "No way." Another whispered. "That's the guy whose company saved the airline last winter." Tammy visibly paled. "That can't be. That can't." But the technician cut her off. "I've seen him once. At headquarters. His photos in our secured internal directory. He doesn't do public press. Most staff don't even know what he looks like." He hesitated, then added with quiet awe. "Has the only person with override authority across the global system." The supervisor staggered back a step. He controls all of this?" The technician nodded. "And he just executed a network pull strong enough to freeze every server tied to our airline. If he hadn't limited it, this entire airport would have gone dark." For the first time since the chaos began, the crowd turned not toward the broken screens, but toward Marcus. The man they'd dismissed, misjudged, pushed aside, now the axis of the room. Tammy opened her mouth, but what came out was barely a whisper. You could have told us." Marcus finally looked at her, expression calm in a way that carried its own kind of authority, quiet, polished, undeniable. "And would it have mattered?" he asked. Tammy blinked rapidly, as if each word was forcing her to confront something she didn't want to see. "You saw my name. You saw my ticket. You saw my ID. You saw the same information you trusted for everyone else. The only thing you questioned," Marcus said, "was me." The words landed harder than any outrage could have, because they were true. The supervisor tried to recover, clearing his throat. "Mr. Langford, sir, there's been a misunderstanding." If we had known, Marcus cut him off without raising his voice. "You shouldn't need to know someone's title," he said, "to treat them with basic respect." The technician looked down, almost ashamed on behalf of the entire staff. Around them, passengers watched with a kind of reverence, not the admiration for celebrity, but the stunned realization of power revealed in real time. The supervisor's radio crackled again. HQ here. Confirm. Do you have Marcus Langford at your gate? The supervisor's eyes widened. He swallowed. Hard. He pressed the button with trembling fingers. Yes, he whispered. Hez here. A beat. Then HQ's voice answered immediate, urgent, terrified. Do not lose him. The terminal went silent again. But this silence was different. This one held a truth no one could unsee. They hadn't been dealing with a difficult passenger. They had been mishandling the man who controlled the airline's lifeline. And Marcus, standing in the same place he was told he didn't belong, had just let the world see how small their arrogance truly was. Panic moved through the airline's command structure faster than the outage itself. While Gate A-17 stared at Marcus like he had stepped out of a legend, the ripple reached headquarters, slamming into executives already scrambling to understand why half their global network had gone dark. The supervisor kept his radio pressed to his ear, waiting for more instructions. His hands shook. HQ's voice came back, urgent and breathless. Do not escalate. Do not confront him. Keep him there, and above all, do not provoke him any further. The supervisor nodded rapidly, even though no one could see him. Understood. Completely understood. Tammy stood frozen, face drained chalk white, as though she had finally realized the magnitude of the person she had tried to lecture about protocol. Across the terminal, passengers were growing louder. My boarding pass disappeared from the app. The kiosk says system unavailable. All flights delayed. Are you kidding me? How can everything break at once? But the collapse wasn't random. It was deliberate, surgical. A precision cut at the one artery the airline didn't know how to protect. Rachel's text appeared on Marcus' screen, discreet, efficient. Network freeze confirmed. All outbound ops halted. Legal and compliance teams briefed, awaiting directive. He locked the phone. No triumph, no anger. Just purpose, the kind that comes after a line has been crossed too many times. The technician swallowed hard, stepping toward him. Mr. Langford, if you could tell us what you need, well, do it. Anything you request we can. Marcus didn't answer immediately. He simply watched the supervisors scramble, watched employees whisper frantically, watched the thin veneer of corporate confidence fall apart like paper in the rain. They had built an empire on convenience. He had just reminded them who built the foundation. The supervisor rushed forward, bowing his head slightly in a gesture that didn't quite know what it wanted to be. Apology, plea, surrender. Mr. Langford, sir, HQ is requesting a conversation. The CEO himself is on the line. We can bring you to the executive lounge while Marcus lifted a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. No. The single word hit like a command coded directly into the floor. Tammy flinched. The guard straightened instinctively. The technician froze. Marcus' tone remained calm, unnervingly calm. Before I speak with anyone at your headquarters, he said, your airline will acknowledge what happened here. Publicly or privately, that's your choice. The supervisor stuttered. We can draft a statement right now. Marcus shook his head. A statement isn't a remedy, he said. It's a reaction. Behind him, another announcement stuttered overhead. Attention passengers. All operations delayed due to an ongoing systems issue. The terminal groaned with frustration, and the airline, powerless, exposed, unraveling, finally understood what it meant to mishandle a man whose influence didn't need noise to be absolute. Marcus looked at the dark screens, at the frozen lines of code flickering faintly behind them. Then he spoke, quiet as a verdict. Nothing moves until we address this. Every monitor in the terminal reflected the truth. They were frozen because he said so, and the airline had no choice but to listen. The terminal had shifted. Moments ago, Marcus was an inconvenience. Now he was the center of gravity, and every employee, every confused passenger, every flickering monitor orbited around him. The supervisor's radio crackled again. A 17. The CEO is on standby. Put Mr. Langford on the line immediately. The supervisor extended the device toward Marcus like an offering. Marcus didn't take it. Instead, he stepped slightly aside, letting the moment stretch, letting them feel the weight of what they'd triggered. Tell him, Marcus said calmly, that he'll speak when I'm ready. The supervisor hesitated, then lifted the radio. Hey, he says he'll speak when he's ready. HQ went silent, not out of defiance, out of fear. Marcus turned to Tammy, the woman who had mocked his pass, had questioned his legitimacy, had labeled him non-premium, as if dignity were a fare class. She couldn't look at him now. She stared down at her terminal, still dark, fingers trembling. "Look at me," he said quietly. Her head rose slowly, eyes wide. "You weren't enforcing policy," Marcus said. His voice wasn't sharp, it carried something worse, truth. "You were exercising prejudice, and you thought your position gave you the right." Tammy swallowed hard, cheeks burning. I didn't mean—" "You meant every word." The supervisor tried to interject. "Mr. Langford, please understand. We can retrain her, update our staff, do whatever." Marcus cut him off with a glance. "Not hostile, just final. This isn't about one employee," Marcus said. "It's about a culture your airline has allowed to rot." The technician standing behind them nodded unconsciously. He knew it was true. Across the terminal, passengers grew quiet, drawn into the center of this private reckoning unfolding in public. Marcus finally took the supervisor's radio. The entire gate held its breath. "This is Marcus Langford," he said. A beat. Then the CEO's voice, tense but overly polite, came through. "Mr. Langford, we sincerely apologize for any miscommunication or mistreatment that may have occurred. Rest assured, these employees will be." Marcus didn't let him finish. "You don't have a systems failure," he said. "You have a leadership failure." Silence. Even HQ didn't dare breathe. "I'm reinstating the network when the following conditions are met," Marcus continued, each word unhurried, deliberate. "First, the staff involved in this incident are removed from passenger-facing roles." Tammy let out a small, strangled sound. "Second, your airline implements a mandatory bias and professionalism overhaul. Not a memo, not a slideshow, real reform." The supervisor bowed his head. "And third," Marcus said, "you will issue a documented apology acknowledging the mistreatment, and you'll address it directly with me." The CEO sputtered. "Mr. Langford, grounding our operations. Was your choice," Marcus replied, "the minute your staff chose disrespect." The words hit the terminal like a quiet thunderclap. He handed the radio back to the supervisor. "I'll restore your systems," Marcus said, "when I see action, not promises." He stepped back into the same spot where he had first been told to leave the line. Only now, the space around him parted without him asking. No one touched him. No one challenged him. No one spoke. Because for the first time all day, the airline finally understood. Marcus hadn't shut their world down out of anger. He had shut it down out of principle. And until they honored that principle, their entire operation would remain frozen by the man who held its heartbeat in his hands. For nearly an hour, the airport existed in a kind of suspended reality. Flights frozen, staff scrambling, passengers oscillating between panic and awe, because the entire terminal now understood exactly why everything had stopped, not because of a malfunction, not because of a storm, but because a man they underestimated decided that dignity mattered more than convenience, and he was right. The supervisor's radio buzzed again. This time, the CEO's voice was different, stripped of corporate polish, weighted with urgency and something rarer, humility. "Mr. Langford, we've taken immediate action. The staff involved have been removed from their positions for review. Training protocols are being rewritten as we speak. We apologize fully." The supervisor repeated the message aloud, voice trembling. Tammy covered her mouth. The guard stared at the floor. The technician let out a breath he'd been holding for 10 minutes. Marcus offered no satisfaction in return, only quiet acknowledgement. "Good." He lifted his phone. One tap, one command. "Rachel, restoring systems now." All at once, the terminal screens flickered back to life. Check-in monitors rebooted in cascading waves of green. Boarding passes resynced to passenger phones. The departure board refreshed, replacing red delays with reorganized times. The airport exhaled as if it had been drowning. A cheer broke out near gate A14. Someone clapped near B3. A child yelled, "It's back!" But at gate A17, silence held for one beat longer, because everyone there knew what had really just happened. Marcus stepped forward, retrieving his boarding pass from the counter. The system recognized him instantly now, not because of a title, but because truth had a way of correcting distorted lenses. The technician nodded with a quiet respect. "Your seat is confirmed, Mr. Langford. First class. The crew's been notified." Marcus didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. He simply picked up his bag. As he walked toward the gate, passengers moved aside instinctively, not out of fear, but recognition. Recognition of a man who had held a corporation accountable without raising his voice. Recognition of a principle reclaimed in real time. Recognition of power exercised not for ego, but for equity. At the jet bridge entrance, the supervisor hurried after him. "Mr. Langford, before you board, I just wanted to say," Marcus paused. "You don't owe me an apology," he said. "You owe it to the people who won't have the power to push back." The supervisor nodded, eyes lowered, chastened. Marcus stepped onto the jet bridge. Behind him, the terminal hummed with restored order, restored function, and a restored understanding that respect is never optional. He didn't look back. Not because he was indifferent, but because justice, once delivered, doesn't need an audience. As the aircraft door closed behind him, the final truth hung over Gate A-17 like a quiet, enduring lesson. Power doesn't demand a stage, it demands integrity. And Marcus Langford had given them both in the only language a broken system ever truly listens to. Consequences.